French Orientalism and also other Orientalism as a continuous movement since at least 16th century until, I would say, 1962, which is a long period. Why do I choose 1962 as a repère, chronological repère? Because, as you know, 1962 is the end of the Algerian War. We must remind this, it's very important, and we must stress from the beginning this point. The Algerian War has been a major historical event, not only for French Orientalism, but for French history itself, for the French nation. As you know, the Fifth Republic, which is now the regime of France, has been created in 1958 during the Algerian War. This simple fact shows you how this is very important. But unfortunately, this major historical event has not yet up to now evaluated, studied by French as it deserves, from the general point of view, not only from the point of view of Orientalism. Before that date, we may say that French Orientalism, as also I would say British Orientalism, has been linked to the, after especially 19th century, has been linked to the colonial movement. And this situation will give the specific style to the French Orientalism. I think it's not necessary to go far in the history until, as I have said, 16th century, because this is known and is described in many studies, in many books. And I refer, for example, to a study made by our colleague Maxime Rodinson in his book La Fascination de l'Islam, a little book but very clear, which describes the history of Orientalism, not only French Orientalism, from the 16th century. I just remind you that in France, the first chair devoted to Arabic teaching has been created for Guillaume Postel in Collège de France in 1539. That's why we may start this interest for Orientalism from a scientific point of view from this date, 16th century, and since that date we had always a teaching in Collège de France until 1795, when the School of Oriental Studies, l'École des Langues Orientales, has been created during the Revolution. And then we had another center for Arabic studies in France, in Paris, and the first professor who has been nominated to teach Arabic in this school was the famous Sylvestre de Sacy, whom you know the importance. And I shall not insist on all this period because it's known, and I have a lot to say about other problems, contemporary issues, which I think are more interesting for us to discuss. But I shall only point out that during the 18th century, when Sylvestre de Sacy has been nominated to this school, we have another line of looking to the Oriental societies, which has been inaugurated by a man who is not well known in our milieu of Arabic studies, who is the traveler Volney. Volney has traveled to Syria and Egypt, and he has written a very, very important document, very precise document on Syria and Egypt in that time. And this document has been studied by my colleague Golmier, Jean Golmier, and it represents another line, because Volney has already reacted to the philological attitude and the philological method to discover and to know these societies. And he said we must understand and look to these societies in living within, and looking to all people and talking to all people, and we must have this, if I may say, ethnographic, but an open ethnographic way to discover these societies. And we shall have these two lines, which will be developed in French Orientalism. It's important. Always developed the erudition line, which doesn't go on to the point described yesterday for German erudition, but still it is also erudition. The first, as I have said, who represented it is Sylvestre de Sacy, and many others up to now, up to Charles Pella, for example. And the other will be the North African School. North African School. You remember that French has conquered Algeria in 1830. And from 1830 to 1962, le terrain, le terrain d'étude, yes, the field was open to everyone who wanted to come to North Africa and to see the society and to have a direct experience of what an Islamic society is. So we have a tremendous amount of studies done on the terrain, from the terrain. This is very important, and this North African School is represented, if you want to have a clear idea of the work done by this school. They have started to publish an important review, which is La Revue Africaine, from 1880. And it has been published until, without interruption until 50s. And in this review, we can have a clear idea of all the work done by several kind of, we cannot call them scholars, because we have officers in the army, for example, who were linked to the administration problem in the society. And through these administration contacts, they had the possibility to study the society. That's why the main interest developed by this school was a kind of ethnographic description of the society and linguistic dialectology, the study of the dialects, which has been started especially by a great Arabist who has had a very important impact on Arabists in France, who is William Marcet, who has done a lot about the study of the dialects. And this interest for the dialects shows us the importance given to the study of the society as it was shown to the people who were very free to visit it. I say free because we shall see after the independence of the Maghreb, the scene will be changed, because the access to the terrain will be more difficult, and we shall have an ideological control, a political control on everything. So the scholarship will change, and the line of scholarship will change. That's why I put this line of 1962. It's very important, and we shall see the consequences. We can have many examples of this look to the terrain. For example, Massignon himself has started his interest to Islamic studies with Lyoté. He was one of the officers who was with Lyoté in the campaign for conquest of Morocco after 1912. And also we have, apart from this interest from dialects, we have an interest to religion, but religion looked at, they have looked at religion also from an ethnographic point of view, because they described the superstitions, the magic beliefs of North African people more than they described the classical Islam. Because North African society, Morocco, Algeria, and Tunisia, in 19th century was virgin from the impact of the West. And I would say also many parts of these societies were virgin from the impact of Arabic language and Arabic culture. We must know this. And one who had the possibility to look, to circulate in this society, had the possibility to discover the genuine, if I may say, Maghrebian society before the impact of the West and before the impact of Arabic, modern trend Arabic, as we shall see after the independence. All the scene will change. That's why it's normal that those people who were discovering this society discovered, in fact, what they called, in the language of that time, superstitions and magic, etc. Of course, this will be discussed from an anthropological point of view. All the anthropology will change this look to the what we call popular religion, la religion populaire, which is opposed to the learned religion, religion of the clerk. And this is also a political, social, and ideological opposition between the two religions. But those people who were discovering this, of course, they were doing it with the ethnographic principles, with the conception of primitive societies, which was the basic conception of ethnography in 19th century in all the West. And they were discovering also and looking to these people with also the principles and the postulate that the Western civilization was the more advanced, and they had all the truth, all the possibilities, all this positivism which has been developed in 19th century, which was taken as a dogma. Nobody discussed it. And everyone was looking and working in this so-called intellectual and scientific framework. And we had all this production, a tremendous production, tremendous literature about religion and beliefs and marriage, etc., customs. All customs has been studied in North Africa. Another example, very interesting and which shows this look to the society, which is a living look, is the work done by Anoto et Le Tourneux. Anoto et Le Tourneux were engaged as administrators in Kabylie. Kabylie is in the north of Algeria. And the Kabylie, as you know, is a region where only Berber was spoken. And only Berber law was applied. Never the Sharia, never Islamic law has been applied. That's why these administrators, according to the politics decided by Napoleon III, les bureaux arabes, etc., have started to look to the customs, to the law, special law of Berber, and they have done a corpus juris of the law, the Berber law, and we have it now. It's a wonderful document, and it's very fortunate that they did it. So, and also we have other studies about confréries, about history, but history also was looked at it from this point of view of ethnographic data, which were collected by all these I don't know, I cannot name them scholars, as I have said, because they were not really scholars. They were people interested in the society by their function in North Africa. The importance of North African school is shown also by the fact that the other line, the scientific and philological line, which is developed in Paris in the School of Oriental Studies, will depend on the North African milieu. For example, Lévi-Provençal, who was one of the leaders of the Arabists in France, has started his career in the Institute of Arabic Studies in Rabat, in Morocco. And then he spent 1 year in Algiers, in the University of Algiers, and he went to France in 1945, after the war, because during the war he was a Jew and he has all the problems, during the war. And the Institute of Islamic Studies, which I have the honor now to be the director, has been founded in 1945 by Lévi-Provençal at the Sorbonne, which means that the study of Arabic at the Sorbonne has started only, it's important to note, only after the war. And we had only one chair given to Lévi-Provençal. And the second chair which will be created in the Sorbonne was the chair of Blacher in 1952 only, which is very, very late. This is to show to you that the Arabic studies were very, very few developed until this date, and they will remain in this situation for a long time. We shall see how the development will be after 1962. The development of Arabic studies in North Africa itself have been started in the University of Algiers in 1880. 1880 was the date of the foundation of University of Algiers. And from that date, they have created, of course, in this university, a department for Arabic studies. And in this department, we have the coexistence of the two lines I have described, the ethnographic line and the erudition line, with professors like René Basset, for example, and William Marcet, whom I have mentioned, and Émile Félix Gauthier, because another interest of this scholarship was also geography. To know the geography, because it was linked to the interest of the colons to exploit the land. I think we can now try to see what will happen after the end of Algerian War in 1962, and try to oppose the difference, to make the difference between this period and the period I have described. After this date, we have a second center which will be created in Aix-en-Provence. This center will be created exactly in 1962, just after the independence of Algeria, because all the professors who were teaching in the Department of Arabic Studies in the University of Algiers moved to France. And this department has been created for all these professors to give them the possibility to continue their work. And Aix-en-Provence will become a very important center very quickly, because there were numerous to come there, and especially we can have the name of Le Tourneau, Roger Le Tourneau, who was the director of this new center. And this center was important also because all the archives, the archives of Algeria were moved to Aix-en-Provence. And these archives had a very important history, because there is up to now discussion, a controversy between Algerian government and the French government about the conservation of these important archives. Anyhow, the importance is that we have now a second new center of Arabic studies in France, the first one being that of the Sorbonne, where we have, after I have mentioned Lévi-Provençal, who is dead in 1954, and we had Régis Blachère, who will be retired only in 1968, and Charles Pellat, who is known, and we will be there also until 1979. Another center has been created in Bordeaux. It has been created with Professor Brunswick, who has moved to Paris in 1954, and another one has been created in Lyon with Laoust. Laoust himself, Henri Laoust, was the son of Émile Laoust, who has started his career also in Morocco. You see that all these people were all linked to North Africa. And another center has been created later in Strasbourg in 1967 with Professor Fahd. Claude Cahen was in Strasbourg, but he was teaching medieval history, in medieval history. He was not supposed to teach Oriental. He just take this by his own decision. And he came to the Sorbonne only in 1960. And he too was retired in 1979. You see these dates. We may say 1970, 1980, if you might want. It's the end of a generation. The generation of Régis Blachère, Brunswick, Pellat, he's alive, but he is retired, Laoust, Émile Laoust, and we shall see what will be the generation who are working now. Another point which must be mentioned in this period after 62 is that many North Africans, Tunisians, Moroccans, and Algerians have immigrated to France as workers, as you know. And now, today, we have 2.5 million people coming from North Africa and living in France. Most of them are living with their children. this created the necessity to develop in secondary school, and this is very special to France, because I think it doesn't exist in any other European country, to create a teaching of Arabic in secondary school. Arabic is taught as well as English, as German, as other languages. All people, all, how do you say, les élèves? Students? Pupils, yeah, all pupils can choose Arabic as well as the other. This is very specific to France, and this is being developed since 5 or 6 years, because the pressure of this population is becoming more and more strong to have the possibility to give to their children the opportunity to study Arabic. So we have a new demand for the university to train the professors for teaching Arabic in the secondary school, and this has created a new situation for Arabic studies. Very quickly, I would like to say now what is the situation with the new generation, if I may say a new generation, because as we shall see from the scientific point of view, there will be no major change in the orientation of the studies and of the look to Islam. We have now many other centers where Arabic studies and Islamic studies are given in France. Very quickly, we have in École pratique des hautes études en sciences sociales, professors in sociology, professors in history who teach these methods. And we have, of course, Collège de France, it continues, but we have only one professor. We had 2 professors and we have only one, who is André Miquel, because Jacques Berck is retired since 3 years, who was also professor there. And by the way, I mentioned that Professor Berck himself was a controller civil, an administrator in Morocco, and he started his interest to Islamic studies in Morocco through the same administrative necessity which I mentioned for all those who have worked in 19th century. And he succeeded in the Collège de France to Robert Montagne, who was also an officer in Morocco, who was a controller civil in Morocco, and who has also done his career both as an administrator and as a professor in the Collège de France. You see the importance, the real importance, the vital importance of North Africa in all the development of Arabic studies. Much more important than the event, which was very limited with Napoleon in Egypt. It was just a limited event. This was a very big, profound, and continuous trend. Up to now, we have all the influence of all the scholarship done during that period. The other universities in which we have Islamic studies are Nancy, Toulouse, Lille, and other universities are starting also an interest to these studies. And I must say that the new minister, Monsieur Savary, has decided officially last year that Arabic studies have a national priority in France. This is an official decision. It's very important to decide that Arabic studies, like informatics, has a national priority in France. And that's why this year he has created, for example, which is very exceptional, five posts. In this period of crisis, he has created 5 posts, but posts for assistant professors, not full professors. But it's good. from the position of the disciplines, which are the disciplines represented in the teaching in France? To give you an example of the weakness of our studies now, when Claude Cahn has retired, it was impossible to find one competent professor to replace him in his chair. And his chair at the Sorbonne is closed up to now. We have nobody to nominate in his place. This shows that we have in France now great need for professors in all the disciplines, but we have not enough possibilities because in the previous time with Blacher, Pella, etc., few students have had interest to go to the level of doctorate, and we have very few who are ready now to come to work as professors. This is a very important situation which we are facing today. The main interest now is shown for two trends. First, linguistics. We had and we have four specialized, very well specialized professors in linguistics, because linguistics, as you know, has taken an important place in all studies in France, but also this could be explained by the fact I have mentioned, the fact that the terrain now is very difficult to go in. It's very difficult for scholars to go to North Africa, to go to Egypt, to go to Iraq, to make studies on the terrain, to develop sociological studies on the terrain, and then they are obliged to do like the philologists did, to work at home, if I may say, and to develop this interest for linguistic and for Arabic study, for Arabic as a language. This is one trend. The other trend is represented by a center for research on Mediterranean society, le CRESME, which is created in Aix-en-Provence since the time I have mentioned, when professors came from Algiers to Aix-en-Provence. And this center is specialized in the study of political trends in Mediterranean society, and especially in the Maghreb. We are always in the Maghreb. And many books, many monographies have been published up to now by this center. You may know them, and they publish a very big annuaire, which is called Annuaire de l'Afrique du Nord, every year. It's a big book which gives all informations about events, political, economical, cultural events in North Africa, which shows the continuity of interest to North Africa. But this study is done by what we call politologue, people or scholars who have no good Arabic training, who have only studied politology or political sciences, as you call it, and we have some misunderstanding between Arabists. On one side, we say, you must master Arabic to do anything about Arabic world, and non-Arabists, like those people, who say, yes, Arabic is necessary, but you have also to master new sciences, new methods to study the society. So we have here an example of an opposition, and this opposition shows that we have not yet overcome the epistemological difficulties of our studies. Well, I have spoken a lot about this. I would like now to give you my own position about all this, and I shall start with the article published by Claude Cahen in 1955 in Studia Islamica, which was a kind of manifest. Claude Cahen has published an article with the title L'histoire économique et sociale de l'Orient musulman. History, economical and social history of Muslim Orient. What he said in this article? He said that all Arabists who were working on history of Oriental societies were not trained as historians. They were trained as philologists. They have learned Arabic in the line illustrated by William Marcet in 19th century and the beginning of 20th century, which is good, but which is not enough. Claude Cahen is basically a historian. He is not an Arabist. He knows Arabic just to read the text, not more. And he is an historian involved in a line which has been developed in France since 1930 and which is very famous and very known with the name École des Annales, the School of Annales. Annales, Économie, Société et Civilisation, which is a very important review published since 1930 up to now. It's not finished. It started with the historian, great historian, very known, Marc Bloch and Lucien Febvre, two major historians who have reacted against historicism of 19th century, against what they called evenemential history, which was just describing the events, the political events and military events and the succession of dynasties. And I may tell you that I suffered a lot in Algiers. When I was students of Le Tourneau, I suffered a lot, and Canard, Marius Canard, about this method, which was the only one method applied and known. And even Lévy-Provençal was in that line. And that's why Cahen, who was involved as a historian in that new line, wanted to introduce a new look and new interest in the study of the societies. This was the first coup de poing given by a French scholar to try to change deeply, to change the mind, not only the method, to change the look. Because when you change your look to the past, your conception of history, how to write history, you change all your attitude to the understanding of all the problems of the society. Then this was really an important event, but unfortunately this event was not followed by great results, since, as I have said, Cahen himself has not had a successor in France, and we lack very much historians in the line of Claude Cahen. Another point, another event, I would say less important but still important, was the article published by Robert Brunswick when he started the publication of Studia Islamica. He wrote an article to introduce this new review which he entitled Perspective. And he described some new ways to walk in for the Islamist, for the Islamology, not for history, because Brunswick was specialized. He was a historian, but he was also specialized. He was the only one specialized in the study of the fiqh, of the law. And this is also another point. We are suffering to have nobody in France to teach this very important field of Islamic civilization, culture and thought, which is the fiqh. We have nobody. But even these two articles, which were important in the time and which shows the retard of backwardness of our studies in France. In spite of this, up to now, we cannot say that we have really a presentation of Islam, as Jacques said yesterday about German scholars. We cannot have a presentation of Islam which could be considered as satisfactory, yes, if we take into account all the scientific movement which has been started in France, not only through the School of the Annales, which I have mentioned, and which has accomplished a tremendous work in all the disciplines. If you want to have a clear idea of all the change made by this school, you can see all the courses delivered each year, for example this year, in École pratique des hautes études en sciences sociales. Because this school has been developed by Marc Bloch and Lucien Febvre, and then by Fernand Braudel, who has been the director of this school, and now it has become the most important school for social and human sciences in France. So, if you want to have an idea of the position of our studies, Islamic studies in France, I think you must look to what is done in this line by our colleagues. We are living in the same place, in the same town. We are doing the same job. If you look, you will discover that, as I have said yesterday, our Islamic studies, Arabic studies, are still marginal. Outside this big movement, which is influenced especially by historians, but also by all the works of Lévi-Strauss on the anthropology, which had in France and out of France a major impact, and all the works done in the literature, literary criticism, very important also for our literary studies in Arabic. It is not yet applied for Arabic literature, and for also the study of religion itself. We have many studies done in the line, represented by Grémas in this school, École des hautes études en sciences sociales. Grémas is the leader of this science called semiotics, and he had many students with him, many disciples now, who have accomplished a very important work on the Gospels and on the Bible, on what they call, he has created a laboratory, for the study of the religious discourse, And they have published many books about this field, which has influenced even theologians, Christian theologians in France, because there are consequences, many consequences of this new look to religious texts. When you read it with this new method and this new epistemology, and these consequences are taken into account by theologians to start a new thinking in theology. Of course, we have oppositions, we have many controversies between us, but it's a new line in which, unfortunately, we have no many students in Islamic studies engaged in. That's why, myself, I am trying to make link between these movements of scientific research in France and to try to apply all these new trends to not Islamic studies as a whole. I am alone and I cannot do everything, but I am trying to do it for Islamology, what we call Islamology, for the study of Islam. And I am trying to do it not to conform myself to academic people, to enter into the serai of scholars as we have described. Not at all. I am doing this starting from my own experience as a Muslim, as an Algerian, and as a scholar. I don't know if I am a scholar, who has studied Arabic with Orientalists in Algiers first. I studied with Henri Pérez. I must mention at least his name, because Henri Pérez has been le roi, the king, but a tyrannic king, a German king, like he was described by, yes. It was impossible to approach him, terrible. And he was not at all prepared as an academic professor, as a universitarian, an universitaire, because he was a teacher in primary school, and never he has moved to, never. And he was teaching us, I have many anecdotes, all in France.
Really wonderful.
Yes, you know it. No, it's too much. We have no time. I can tell you yes, but only one example. Every year, all the students must follow his course on the orthograph of the Hamza. 3 months. 3 months. How to write the Hamza? It's a big problem. Yes? Anyhow, also, when you follow a course on the history of Maghreb, and you are a young Algerian, a young Tunisian, a young Moroccan, and you have only this succession of dynasty, everyone killing the other, always people killing, always instability, no nation, no possibility of political unity. A terrible presentation, a terrible image, a despairing image. And we were looking to understand ourselves, to understand something, what was happening to us. Nothing. You have no answer. No question raised. That's why my reacting to this erudition as it has been presented, my reacting is first an existential reacting to say that we must do other things to meet the needs, cultural needs, human needs, also political needs of people today, because they are raising the same question as which were raised in my when I was students. My students are raising exactly the same, because nobody up to now has answered to these questions. For example, the study of the Maghreb, the study of history of the Maghreb, is still dependent on a book written by Charles-André Julien in 1930. 1930, you listen. Up to now, Histoire de l'Afrique du Nord. It is reedited by Le Tourneau and Christian Courtois, who were just working in the mind and the historicism of the 19th century. Especially Christian Courtois, who was specialist of history of the Maghreb before the Arabs in the Roman period. He was looking to this history through the imagery, the ideology developed by all colonial school of history in the Maghreb, which was teaching that the Maghreb was occupied by Roman, was Latinized, was Christianized, so it must be linked to the West and not to the Orient and Islam. And they developed this ideology to sustain the ideology, the colonial ideology. And it was taught like this. And you must listen, you must follow. So this is what we have experienced as students. And that's why one is very impatient to change this climate. And when I went to Paris, hoping that in Paris I shall meet some new teaching and some new responses to our questions, I found almost the same situation. With Blachère, who was also a very strict man, and very philologist and positivist man. He was not at all interested in, for example, all these questions of religion and the study of Islam, etc.
Or poetry.
Huh?
Or poetry.
Even poetry. He studied poetry in the line of Lanson, Gustave Lanson. He was really dependent on all the scholarship of 19th century. Yes, we must say this. And this has lasted, that's what I mentioned, all the dates. This has lasted until 1979. And it goes even now. Then the reaction has been motivated by this situation first, and not by the academic conformity to what my colleague are doing on this field. And my concern, and I may say, I'm not alone. There are many now, not so many, but some intellectuals, Maghrebin intellectuals especially, who are working and who have been trained through this French line, because the French line, if you look outside the Arabist milieu, you can really discover some tools, some intellectual tools, which you cannot discover through English culture or through German culture. This must be said. And the intellectual tools given by French scholarship outside Arabist can give us the possibility to have another look and another relation with what the Arabs call the turath, the heritage, our heritage. How to look to this heritage? This is a very big issue. I would like to end my talk just to stress this point, and I hope you will ask me questions to give me the possibility to go more deep in these questions. How to apply these new sciences, this new methodology to Islamic studies today. Of course, we must respect all the demands of Muslims today. The demands of Muslims today, as you know, is to go back to the golden age of Islamic thought, the golden age of Islamic culture, and even we have a trend which we may describe as a mythical trend. This trend which says that we must go back to the time of the Prophet, because everything is there, everything has been said, and all the truth is there. We must then go there and take all the truth and start again our history. You know very well this position, which is typically a mythical position, which creates for us a responsibility how to deal now, since this discourse exists, and it is the dominant discourse, how to deal with this Islamic discourse today, which is the dominant one, through the mass media, through the congresses, through the seminars, everywhere. How to deal with it? Shall we deal with it with philological method only, or shall we have other methods to deconstruct, how to say, deconstruct, to deconstruct, I mean to show how it is made, how it is constructed, to deconstruct all this discourse today. I think you see what is the answer. The answer commanded by the actual situation now, which we are living now, is that, of course, we must continue. I must say it, because I have always feared to be accused to put philology away. No, we must continue the philological work, but we must absolutely create new climate to meet this new situation, historical situation created by the history of Islamic societies today, which are characterized by the development of this mythical demand to identify themselves, to have their identity, as they say, to have their asala in Arabic. But this asala, this identity, is searched with ideological and mythical approach. And we, as scholars, we must clarify this situation and say that there is a mythical approach and there is a scientific approach, which is not a positivist one, but which is open to integrate even this imaginary, which is basic in the mythical discourse, l'imaginaire social. The imaginary, you have talked about imaginaire, for example, in 19th century and before, the imagination has been, of course, presented as a very, very bad faculty, very bad, very negative faculty. But now we have a new look to imagination, a new describing the social imagination. And we are discovering that this social imagination can be the main point to show in the functioning of culture, of any culture, but especially Islamic culture today, because this Islamic culture is cut historically from its own heritage, this heritage which it claims to go to. We do not know in Islamic society. We do not know the reality, the historical reality of Islamic culture in the classical age. We need so many works done in German style. Yes, I say it without, yes, I believe in it. Done in German style to really know what is going on in this classical age. For example, the book I mentioned yesterday of Van Es about Zwischen Hadithun is very important because it shows what has happened in the first century of the Hijrah from a historical point of view. And this meets all the mythical look which is developed by Muslims now about this period. And you see then what's the response of the scholars to this ideological and mythical trends which is dominating today. And without this new look and this new method to study Islam and to study even the main text of Islam. That's why I am interested first in the Quran and in the Seerah. And if I have time, I shall be interested also in the study of the Usul al-Fiqh, which is very basic in the structuring of what I call the Islamic reason.